Welcome back to part 3 of our Penmaker's Canvas series. In this video, we're going to create a custom finial to finish off this pen blank that we've been making. You know, most of these pen kits, especially these roller balls, and some of the ball points, have these finials in them. You know, some are just black and some are goldish and some are elaborate embossings on them. And some of them are pretty nice, and they add to the aesthetics of the pen, but there's nothing like a custom turned finial that matches the rest of the blank or portions of the rest of the blank. And that's what we're going to do in this one. We're going to make a custom finial. And this is our cap that's going to go in our roller ball. And you can see in the middle of the cap there's this gold looking finial. And that's what we're going to change out. We're going to use a portion of this blue box elder burl that's in our segments. But to do that, we've got to get this finial out so that we can measure it and accurately know what it is we're going to do. And a little tip, if you're going to do very many of these for different pen styles, just keep you a little list of Junior Gent 2 finial, this in diameter, this thickness, and this post size. And that way you don't have to measure this every time. But first of all, here's how to remove this finial so that you can measure it and so it can be replaced. Most of these finials, they're just sitting in there and they're epoxied in or whatever, so we have to punch them out. This punch size, and by the way, this is a set of Harbor Freight punches. I think they're $12 at Harbor Freight. I'll leave you a link in the description. But this one is 13/32 and it fits on there perfect. Now what I've got an oak block with an 11/32 hole. Now what that does, that lets this part of the cap sit on this rubber. I've got it covered with a rubber gasket. When you make this, put your rubber gasket down and then drill your 11/32 hole. That way your rubber gasket stays out on the edge. But you just simply place your cap over that rubber gasket, insert the punch with the punch side down in there and just give it a good couple of taps. There it is. It's that easy to remove the finial, and you're not going to damage it if you take care. Now the second thing we have to do, if you notice on this finial, what's set down in there, that hole that's in there, there's a little post that sits right there. We have to remove that so that we can accurately measure. So I have one here that's already removed. So now we just need to record our dimensions so that we know what we're going to turn, what size. So the diameter of these that we need to turn is 425 thousandths a diameter. Diameter is 0.425. Actually, anywhere between 0.420 and 425 will work just fine. Then the thickness of it is, this is 113 thousandths. The thickness, it's 113. I like to do them anywhere between 90 thousandths and 105. I may have not have gotten all the posts ground off on this one, so I may be getting some residual thickness from there. But we're going to make ours somewhere between 90 and 105 thousandths thick. And then that little post, you might want to measure this before, or actually you can measure the hole. The hole here is 155 thousandths. So that little post has to be less than 0.155. So you might be asking, well, how in the world are we going to turn such a small piece on the lathe. Well, first of all, we need to identify an area that we want to use as our cap. What eventually is going to happen is that we're going to glue a portion of this to a 1/2 inch diameter dowel rod. I'm going to zoom in a little here. See this section right here that's got this clear and blue? I think we're going to use that to be in our cap. So what I just place a dowel rod over the area that I want to use. That kind of frames out the piece. You can see I've got it circled out. So that's going to be our finial. We can save ourselves a lot of trouble is to cut our piece off that we're going to glue to this dowel rod, to cut it as close to 100 thousandths as possible. And what we'll do is take it over the bandsaw and we'll just cut a sliver off right here. Okay, here at my bandsaw I've got just a little sled here, and this is a little tip I got from Bob over at RJB Wood Turners. On my bandsaw sled you can see I've got some codes written along my fence. This is the length of one pin tube, this is the length of another, and then there's a key up here that explains it. Well, I've done something very similar for the finial for this particular pin. If you notice right here, I've got a mark and an F by it. Well, that's the finial. That's 105 thousandths finial. So all I have to do is set my end of my blank on my mark. That's marked for the finial, and that's about 105 thousandths. And then just cut it. So there we have it, and now we're ready to put it onto that dowel. We've got our 1/2 inch dowel, and this is what we're going to use to chuck it up into the lathe. Using some CA glue, I'll just put some CA glue on the dowel, and then we just glue it to the area that we had marked a minute ago. And we'll be ready to take it to the bandsaw where we can then trim it up so that we've got it ready to turn. And there we have it. Now we'll go to the bandsaw, we'll trim it up, and then we'll be ready to turn. See, we've already got our thickness, pretty close to our thickness. We said that we had to have a thickness of 113 thousandths, which is really too big. We needed a thickness of about 90 to 105. Well, we've already got it at about 100, so it saves us a lot of work at the lathe. Now all we have to do is turn it to the diameter of 420 to 425 thousandths. Let's trim it up. Now that gets most of the work done. See, we've already got it down to 500 thousandths, so all we have to do now is turn it down just a little. So most of the work's done. Got our 1/2 inch dowel rod with our piece mounted up in my collet chuck. Got it mounted in my lathe, ready to start. Remember we said it's 425 thousandths is our diameter that we need. Well, a little trick to help you is I've got an 11 millimeter wrench. 11 millimeters is about 430 thousandths. So I can sneak up on it and use this as a go and no-go gauge. And if it gets under 430 thousandths, then I know I'm pretty close to my 425, and then we can fine-tune it from there. Just a little tip. You can use your wrenches as go and no-go gauges to help you out a little bit. With that, let's start turning it down a little bit.
Now we can check it with our calipers. We're under 11 millimeters, so we know we're close. We're at 422. That's perfect, between 420 and 425. See, the real advantage of having it mounted on a 1/2 inch dowel rod, we don't have to turn it a whole lot. Now I just need to get it down to, it's a little thick. Remember I mentioned earlier it's a little thick, so I need to get it just a little bit thinner. That's about 92, which is perfect for me. I like them between 90 and 105 thousandths. So now, remember we have to cut that post, and that post has to be less than 159 thousandths. So okay, dimension wise we've got what we need. So all that's left to do is to sand it, polish it, and buff it up, part it off, and we'll glue it into the cap. I'll do that off camera. Well, here we have it. We have our finial that we just turned, our custom finial. Now it matches the rest of it, and it fits just perfectly into our cap. That is just gorgeous. You see in the bottom how the little post we turned was just in the right size to fit down in there to set. One tip though, when you're turning these finials on the lathe like we just did, make sure you finish it before you part it off. Speaking from experience, on this one I put my CA, I think I put 10 coats of CA and then micro meshed it just like I do most of my pins, because it's almost impossible to finish once it's off the lathe. Another tip is, and I'll do this here in a minute, I'll do this off camera, but this surface on which our finial sits on this cap, it's bright chrome, so that needs to be scratched up with a razor, a nail, or whatever. I'll use my Dremel tool with an abrasive tool on it and scratch it up all the way around, and then we can epoxy or super glue or CA glue, whatever you like. I'll use 2-part epoxy to put this on. What I'll do is I'll put epoxy in here, and then I'll put the finial in the cap, and then I'll also drop a drop of epoxy on the inside here, and then let it sit. And that is how you make a custom finial. And in a moment we'll put it all together. Stay tuned.
Good morning. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for watching our Pen Makers Canvas series. We hoped you enjoyed the videos. We hope there was some skill builders in it for you to help you in your pen making. If there was something in it you liked, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and subscribe to our channel like we've been calling it, LLS. Like, leave a comment, and subscribe. In a minute, at the end of the video, there's going to be a 10 out of 10 second shot of the pen that we've been making, and it's complete, where you can see the aluminum rod accents, you can see the custom finial we made today. That'll be right at the end of the video. Next week, we're going to build a wall clock out of cedar. So we hope you tune in for that, and until then, work safe.